I was called Akata once by someone who shared my bloodline, and I stood there, unable to speak, not because I was angry, but because somewhere deep down, I already knew the wound they were poking at was real. That moment is why this video exists. This isn't a video about hate. It is a video about two groups of people who were broken apart by the same hands, then handed a script that told them to blame each other. And if you watch until the end, I think you'll see yourself somewhere in this story. The tension between Black Americans and Africans is real. But if you think it starts with attitude or arrogance or ignorance, or you're looking at the surface of a river and calling it shallow. The roots go down 400 years, and they are tangled around a secret that neither side is fully ready to speak out loud. That secret is called the First Betrayal. And it didn't happen in America. It happened on the coast of West Africa, in the courts of kingdoms powerful enough to negotiate with European merchants. Your ancestors were not just taken. Some of them were sold by people who looked exactly like them. Sit with that for a moment. Because that single fact changes the emotional architecture of every interaction between the diaspora and the continent. Before a word is spoken, before a handshake is extended, there is an invisible wall built from a wound that was never given a name. Imagine opening an ancestry kit and seeing the name of a kingdom flash across your screen. You feel joy for exactly 3 seconds. Then you start researching, and you find that same kingdom's name in the historical record of the Transatlantic Slave Trade, not as a victim, but as a supplier. That is not a history lesson. That is a family secret. And it lands like a punch you were not ready for. This is the confrontation Black Americans are increasingly facing in the age of DNA testing. A kit can tell you where your blood comes from, but it cannot tell you how to feel about it. It cannot hold you while you process the fact that the betrayal did not begin on a ship. It began at home. That grief quietly follows Black Americans into every interaction with someone from the continent. It is rarely said out loud, but it is always in the room. On the other side of that silence, many Africans arrive carrying their own invisible weight. They left behind families, careers, and sometimes entire identities to survive. The word poverty does not capture it. They left because staying felt like dying slowly. When you come from that place, a job that pays a fraction of what it should still feels like oxygen. You are not thinking about wage floors or labor movements or what a union fought for in 1960. You are thinking about your mother's medical bill and your brother's school fees back home. That desperation is not a moral failure. It is a survival reflex. But here is where the system steps in and turns one person's survival into another person's setback. The corporation does not see brothers. It sees a budget line. It has known for decades that the most effective way to dismantle hard-won labor progress is to find someone more desperate and put them in the same room. When an immigrant accepts 30% less, not out of greed, but out of necessity, the boardroom wins without throwing a single punch. This is the labor trap. And it is not an accident. It is a design. The same system that profited from enslaved African labor in the 1600s learned to update its method. It no longer needs chains. It just needs a wage gap and a border. The cruelest part is that both groups end up resenting each other instead of looking up at the architecture that built the trap they are both standing in. Then there is the word problem. We speak the same language and still manage to weaponize it. Akata, Jarir, bounty. These are not just slurs. They are eviction notices. They say, "You do not belong to us, and we do not belong to you." They turn kinship into a question mark. Language like this does not come from nowhere. It comes from generations of people who were taught by colonial education systems that the diaspora was lost and the continent was primitive. Both groups internalized someone else's insult and handed it to each other as if it were their own opinion. London is where this collision becomes a mirror. Walk through Brixton today, and you will feel the same friction that moved through Harlem 20 years ago. The Windrush generation who marched and bled and negotiated their dignity inch by inch, watch newer waves of African migration arrive and feel something complicated, not pure anger, something quieter and more painful than that. They feel skipped, like the people who planted the tree are now being asked to make room for people picking the fruit. That feeling is not always fair, but it is always real. And ignoring it does not make it disappear. It just makes it louder. The media understands this tension better than we do, and it profits from it. You are not meeting a Nigerian person. You are meeting a 30-second news clip of Lagos traffic and corruption headlines. You are not meeting a Black American. You are meeting a 2-minute segment designed to make you associate an entire culture with crime. These images are not accidents. They are inventory, kept stocked by systems that benefit from the two groups staying divided. Because two groups that are busy misreading each other are not busy looking at who wrote the script. But here is what that script has been desperate to hide. There are moments when the wall comes down, when the diaspora and the continent find each other and recognize what they actually are. Look at the coalition work between Black American activists and Nigerian youth organizers during the 2020 uprisings. Protests in Lagos echoed protests in Minneapolis, not because someone coordinated it, but because the grief was the same shape. Look at Afrobeats crossing into American hip-hop, not as a trend, but as a homecoming. Look at the quiet ways African immigrant doctors and Black American nurses have held communities together through every health crisis this country has faced. These are not coincidences. They are evidence that when the noise is stripped away, the recognition is still there. So when people ask if there is hate between Black Americans and Africans, the honest answer is this: what looks like hate is actually two sets of unhealed wounds pressing against each other in the dark. It is the first betrayal meeting modern desperation. It is grief that never had a funeral. The divide stays alive because the full story is never told in one place. It gets split up, sensationalized, or ignored. So both groups walk around with half a picture, filling in the missing pieces with whatever the algorithm feeds them that morning. The real enemy in this story has no face you can scroll past. It is the system that sold your ancestor, then hired your cousin to replace you, and then put both of you in front of a camera and called it content. The question was never whether there is friction. The question is whether you are going to keep letting someone else light the match. Both groups are walking out of the same burning building. The only real choice is whether you reach back for each other or keep running in opposite directions. The flags we are waving against each other, they were sewn by the same hands that built the cage. It is time we finally put them down.